Welcome, everyone. My name is Mihei Zhang, and I'm the Community Advocacy Director at California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, CPEN, located in the Los Angeles office. I will be your facilitator today. So thank you, everyone, for joining the community organizing webinar that's happening today. And this is the 6th webinar out of an 8-part marathon training in the Mobilizing for Health Equity series. This training series is open to all, but designed to support the work of the Having Our Say Coalition, a statewide coalition comprised of over 30 organizations that work to ensure the voices of communities of color are heard as part of healthcare policy discussions. So if you've joined the webinar and you are part of the Having Our Say Coalition, you know who you are. If you don't know the Having Our Say Coalition, you can visit our website, havingourcoalition.org. The training series was designed with the coalition's input, and throughout the series, we hope to learn together and provide foundational knowledge and tools around health equity advocacy and policy work. We invite community-based organizations who are interested in learning about advocacy, whether media, social media, legislative, budget, administrative, direct action, or more, to join and share this webinar series. Okay, so today the goal of the community organizing webinar is to answer this question, which is, what is organizing? The speakers will cover their organization's community organizing models, specific examples of wins and challenges, and other work that they would like to share. This learning will also help us understand why organizing is necessary and how it can be applied to advocate for systems change to advance health equity. So before we go into the webinar, I'm going to provide a few housekeeping items. So we have muted all of you, and if you have any questions, we've enabled the question feature. You may need to click the orange arrow to show the control panel, and there you will see the question box. If you think of a question for our speakers at any point today, just type it in there, and I will make sure that the questions get forwarded to the speakers. And we will hold all the questions till the end so that we have time for the speakers to go through their presentations. And today's webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to share a link with all of you after the event is complete. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleague. And again, all of the recordings and the PowerPoint of the webinar and all the previous 5 webinars as part of the series are on the Having Our Say Coalition website. So feel free to visit www.havingourSayCoalition.org. And at the end, we're going to send you an evaluation survey. So please take a moment and fill those out. We value your feedback. We want to make sure that our webinars continue to improve. So please, take some time to fill it out. It's going to be so helpful for us to measure our work and make sure that we improve our webinar series next year. Great. Next slide. Okay, so these are the 2 wonderful speakers we have today. So we're going to get started with Tarek. So just to introduce Tarek, he is a San Diego native with a BA in Political Science from UCSD and a master's in public administration from San Diego State University. He has previous advocacy experience in telecommunications and the transportation fields, along with budget development experiences in municipal government. He works at Mid-City CAN, one of the Having Our Say Coalition partners. So over there, he works closely with the organizers and community members in advancing various policy objectives. He also works towards fostering close relationships between Mid-City CAN and various government offices, businesses, nonprofit organizations, labor unions, and civic groups. He was inspired to work at Mid-City CAN by the community developed campaigns of the organizations. His vision for the community is the implementation of policies designed to improve transportation in City Heights, which is a neighborhood in San Diego, for youth, juvenile justice reform through restorative justice practices, and addressing the food scarcity challenges. So take it away, Tarek. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mihai, for the nice and kind introduction there. Can you hear me okay? Everything is good? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. I
Okay.
can hear you at least.
Great. All right, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm the policy advocate at Mid-City CAN. We're a community-based org here in City Heights. City Heights is a neighborhood in San Diego. It's in the Mid-City area. It's kind of a very dense area. Let's see. Do I say next slide, or do I have access to switch the slide?
You can say next slide.
Oh, next slide. Okay, got it. So a little bit about our org. Like I said, we're community-based, which means the issues that we work on are brought to us by our community members, and they're decided through a kind of long and rigorous planning process that kind of takes about roughly 2 months. And so what happens is there are specific issues that City Heights faces. They come to us, and then we hold planning sessions to discuss it, debate the issues, how to address the issues. And at the end of the planning process, that's how we kind of formed the campaign and began strategizing on how we're going to tackle this issue. Mid-City CAN provides the space for community members to work in. We provide the technical assistance through the organizers who come in and help them organize into momentum teams. And then we also do the advocacy on behalf of the campaigns that they've selected, which is the bulk of my work, is the lobbying and advocacy work. And currently, we organize the campaigns into what we call our momentum teams. And so currently we have 4 active momentum teams, which is the Youth Council, made predominantly of City Heights youth working on youth-related issues, Improving Transportation in City Heights, or ITCH for short, which works on improving transit and acquiring no-cost transit passes for youth in City Heights. City Heights is a very transit-dependent community. And then the Food Justice Momentum Team, which works on addressing the food scarcity issue. So this is a neighborhood that's also very it's what's known as a food desert, which means it has very limited healthy food options. There's a lot of liquor stores in the area, and not the best quality of foods here. And then the Peace Promotion Momentum Team is our final team, which works on addressing the what we call the school to prison pipeline, dismantling that, and basically fighting policies that currently exist, criminal justice policies that exist that overly criminalize youth. Next slide. So a little bit about the neighborhood. So like I mentioned, we're in the Mid-City area, which is like the center of San Diego. Our population is just a little bit over 100,000, but it's crammed into like a 7 square miles. So it's a very dense area. Medium household income is about 39,000, and the median age is around 30. And also, this is a very large immigrant community. It's very diverse, with the biggest minority communities being Vietnamese, East African, specifically Ethiopian and Somali, and some Eritrean as well. And historically, it's always been a very a diverse and immigrant community, and Latino as well, a large Latino population here. Next slide. So the first campaign I'm going to talk about has to do with the Youth Council and their CRB campaign. And CRB stands for Community Review Board on Police Practices. So this campaign was selected by the youth. The last few campaigns that the youth have selected has dealt more with fighting, as I stated earlier, policies that overly criminalize youth in our community. And there are specific policies that are citywide regarding youth. For example, like curfews. Like City of San Diego has a curfew policy. No youth are allowed to be outside after 10 p.m. that are under the age of 18. But really, it only gets implemented in specific low-income communities, with City Heights being at the forefront a lot of the times. And so a lot of youth, high school age youth, they work, they're out, and they do get, they get detained for being past 10, even if it's clear that they're coming from their jobs. And when we looked at numbers, it was disproportionately, like this is a citywide policy, but it's disproportionately implemented in this community. And then it begins a whole chain for youth that have that first interaction with police, where they get detained, and then they get charged, and then their family, or they don't have the money to fight this in court, so they just plead guilty to whatever charges that are levied at them. And that initial interaction is what we call the start of the school to prison pipeline. And so the last couple of campaigns that the Youth Council has been working on has dealt with that. The previous campaign was when the City of San Diego was hiring a new police chief. They wanted to be part of the selection process, so we lobbied hard, our council members and our officials, our mayor as well. And typically, when a new police chief is selected in San Diego, though it's always been done, is just the mayor selects someone. There's not really much debate about it, and the council confirms it. But we made a lot of noise last year in this process in 2018, and so we did get a seat at the hiring table to discuss the issues about what kind of policies this new police chief is going to present. And so that kind of sparked the initial interest, and then in this kind of work, and then we got involved with the CRB campaign. Now, our Community Review Board on Policing is, their job is to handle all citizen complaints, but it's not an independent review board. The members are selected by the mayor. They have no investigative authority, no subpoena power. And so we got involved with a couple of coalition members that are working to basically abolish the current CRB and create an independent commission on how to handle citizen complaints or community complaints about policing. We wanted to abolish the board and create an independent commission with 2 youth seats, because we believe youth should have a voice on policing matters if we're going to fight policies that criminalize youth. So to do this, it requires a charter amendment. So us and our coalition allies, we have been going through the legislative process in the city to amend the charter and then have the voters vote on in 2020 in the November election. So our charter amendment will be on the ballot for 2020, and the youth are learning about the legislative process. So the drafting of the charter amendment, and then going and advocating it at city council, and going through the various different committees. We've been through 2 committees already. And then this picture that you see here, these are some of our youth that are involved in this campaign. And the picture in the back, you see that the wall that they're painting, this is our mural that they helped paint. So this was the launch of our campaign, and we started this campaign by having a big mural painted here on City Heights. We called it the Schools Not Prisons campaign, and that's some of our youth painting it. Next slide. And this is what the mural looked like when it's finished. So as you can see at the top, it says the hashtag Schools Not Prisons, and then the I Am Possible mural. Next slide. So this is a picture of many of our youth at City Council advocating at the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee, where this charter amendment was first heard. And our youth were there holding up their signs, giving public comment. And then we also played this video, which I'm hoping that you guys will be able to hear. If you can go ahead and play the video.
Because you are being over-policed and underrepresented.
Okay, apologies for the audio quality wasn't the best, but yeah, so basically that was our youth that shot the video, and we played it at City Council, basically explaining why they're taking on this campaign and why they're calling for an independent commission on police practices. Next slide. And then this is after the hearing at one of the committees, the youth council outside, taking a picture, wearing their schools not prisons, and learning about how to be active participants in their local governments and on their local issues that affect them every day. Next slide. So now I'll talk about our other momentum team, the Improving Transportation in City Heights, or ITCH for short. These are some of the youth that are involved in that campaign. This momentum team is made up of a combination of adults and youth. And the basic goal is to get no-cost transit passes for youth. Initially was for youth in these specific zip codes in City Heights and neighboring areas. This is a very transit-dependent community, also a low-income community. And there are a lot of people, youth, that grow up in this area that they never even go to the beach. It's only about 12 miles away from here. And the cost of ridership on these families is very burdensome. So the whole goal of this campaign is to alleviate some of that financial cost on families, so their kids can have bus passes to travel outside of City Heights and experience other areas of San Diego, find after school work, after school activities, just basically expose them to all the other opportunities that our city offers. And we've been working on this campaign since 2013. We've made some progress, a couple of false starts. We had a pilot program that was jointly run with the city and the school district, but it didn't take, just because of the way that our regional transit agency implemented it. It wasn't the best way of implementing, so we couldn't renew the program. But we are copying the models that exist in Washington, D.C., in Oakland and San Francisco for youth transit programs that put these bus passes in these kids' hands, and advocating heavily at our regional transit agency and explaining to them that this helps a lot of the cities here, including the city of San Diego, but also the neighboring smaller cities, meet their climate action goals by implementing a program like this. One, and two, you're acclimating young riders to be lifelong riders. So the earlier you take public transit, the more you're likely to take it as an adult. And so we got a really good opportunity in 2020 because our regional transit agency, MTS, is running a ballot initiative. This is the first time they've run a direct ballot initiative themselves. And this is a half-cent sales tax that would increase, that would bring in about roughly $14 billion over the next 40 years, and basically invest more in public transit and trolleys and buses, more routes, more frequencies. And so we've been advocating to include youth passes, no-cost youth passes up to the age of 21. Ideally, we'd want it up to the age of 24 to include transitional age youth too. So that's what we're kind of negotiating with them, to include that in the ballot initiative language to fund this project. And this project, it's not a lot of money. Like, we project it to be about 10 million a year, which in the grand scheme is kind of a drop in the bucket for the 14 billion they're trying to raise. So we've been working very closely with the transit agencies and the council president, who's also the chair of the transit agency here in San Diego, of MTS. And she's also from City Heights as well. So this is the first time that City Heights has elected one of their own members. So she's been very receptive to us and working on this issue with us. And hopefully we finally get this project fully funded after the 2020 election. Next slide. So this is a picture. So like I said, MTS, which is a regional transit agency, they have been, their campaign is called Elevate 2020. That's what they're pushing for. That's the tax measure for that they're trying to pass in 2020. So they have had a number of forums throughout different communities in San Diego, and the one that was the most well attended was the one in City Heights. They had the highest number of attendance, and these are a lot of our residents here, going over the different priority projects that they would like to see funded. And so a lot of our youth showed up to demand for youth opportunity passes, or no-cost passes as we call them, and then a lot of our other community members were calling for more rapid passes, more frequencies, and things of that nature. And it was a very well attended event. And the person in the back, I don't know if you guys can see the person with the blue jacket, that's the council president and the council rep for this area. Next slide. So now I'll talk about the Food Justice Momentum Team, which works on addressing the food desert issue and the lack of healthy foods in the community. They are working on developing community gardens in City Heights. So the land These are the gentleman on the left with the sunglasses on. That's his name is Hanak. He's our organizer for this campaign. And then the other 4 members are volunteers, part of the team. And the lot that you see right behind them, that's an empty city lot that's been vacant for about 15 years. And we are working closely with the city to have that lot leased over and then developed into a community garden. And there are a lot of, surprisingly, land is so valuable in San Diego and even in City Heights where, it's kind of rapidly gentrifying, but there are still a lot of empty lots that are undeveloped. Some of them are publicly owned, a lot of them are privately owned, actually. So we advocated last year for the city to kind of do something about these empty lots, provide some kind of incentive program. And they passed an ordinance saying, the property owners of these lots, if they're not going to, if they lease it over to convert them into community gardens, they get a property tax break for doing so. And so we've been looking at various empty lots, and then we came across this one. And the goal is to kind of get this first community garden going in City Heights and kind of be the initial spark here and get a whole trend going of developing these community gardens to grow healthy, fresh vegetables and fresh vegetables and fruits, and and kind of do a little part of addressing the lack of healthy foods in City Heights. The previous campaign that this Momentum team worked on was getting more culturally appropriate foods into the schools that are in City Heights. So as I said, this City Heights is it's got a big immigrant population and a big East African population. Then there's a lot of Muslim students that were attending school here, and they were advocating for halal lunch, which is it's very similar to how observant Jews eat kosher. It's similar to that. And so we advocated at the school district and got that passed. And so now the new policy at San Diego Unified is if there's a certain percentage of students within a certain school, then the school has to provide a culturally appropriate meal for them. And it can be Muslim students, Jewish students, or if there's like a certain number of vegetarians or vegans, then the school is obliged to do that. So we got that so that was the previous campaign before the Community Gardens campaign. And the Community Gardens campaign, we're very excited about. So we're working very closely with the Park and Rec department of our city on this campaign. And the first step is securing the lease and then getting that initial design investment from the city, which probably we're hoping to achieve this within the next 6 months. Next slide. Okay, so now the last momentum team that I'm going to talk about is the Peace Promotion Momentum Team, or PPMT for short. So this, so as I mentioned earlier, the Youth Council is fighting policies that overly criminalize youth. This momentum team is made up of a lot of older City Heights residents and some youth, and they work in the same vein, but they're more focused on kids that have kind of fallen into the justice system already. So a lot of youth that are like first-time offenders. Within City Heights, we have a program called Restorative Community Conferencing, which is a restorative justice program that handles their offenses in a restorative way. Not every case, obviously, but some specific cases where youth might offend in this zip code, and then they come into contact with law enforcement, and then we've been advocating for law enforcement to really look at the case before they take action and see if this case can be resolved restoratively, and send them into our RCC program. And so we don't provide the restorative justice itself. We have a third-party implementer that we contract out with, who then receives the case and handles it. But for them to receive the case, we had to do a lot of advocacy and lobbying at the start with the school police, and then to our district attorney, and then the public defender's office, the sheriff's office, and then finally SCPD. We got to come on board and sign on to our MOU. So we meet once a month to go over the cases and see, you know, where they've been diverted into these programs. And we've been running this program since 2014. Got a lot of pushback in the beginning from school police, who were the first group that we were trying to get on board with this, because they didn't know a lot about restorative justice or restorative practices. They just saw it as like a slap on the wrist to the youth that they weren't going to learn from their mistakes. But now they're our biggest advocates. They see the low recidivism rates for youth that go through these programs, and the bigger community health and cohesion and healing that goes on when, you know, kids handle their disputes in a restorative way. And so over time, the program has increased outside of City Heights. So some of our partners are saying, well, why are we just focusing to City Heights? Why don't we also include, like, you know, Southeast San Diego, which also has, you know, higher contact rates of youth with police. And then so we increased it to there. Another area called Barrio Logan, just outside downtown. Similar, we began including arrests in that zip code. And then another area called Lemon Grove, which is like, it's its own city, actually. It's a much smaller city that kind of neighbors City Heights. We began including arrest figures there. And so it's kind of grown out to like 5 different zip codes. And the county began taking notice because they were our partners in this, and they saw the low recidivism rates. And so they began investing their own money into increasing this program. So the probations department last year put in an extra $2 million in training their new juvenile probation officers into handling cases restoratively, and basically taking our model that we developed in City Heights and taking it countywide, and you know, and having our pilot what started as a pilot program in 2014 kind of go countywide. So we're very excited about that, and it all started with, you know, a lot of the people you see here in the pink shirts. These are some of our original members of the Momentum team kind of coming together in like 2013, 2014 to discuss and debate how to address this issue of youth criminalization and, you know, dismantling the school to prison pipeline. And now it's kind of grown countywide, and we're very proud of that. You know, and it also started with the school board passing a resolution addressing the issue of school climate and the need to utilize tools like restorative justice and restorative practices over like the traditional punitive measures that school districts have taken in punishing youth. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions if you guys have any.
Thank you, Tarek. We will leave the questions till the end. That was really beautiful pictures. Thanks for including them. So we have Genevieve next as a speaker, and just a brief introduction for her. And, you know, thank you so much for our speakers. Very busy time of the year, and, you know, they're making time to do these presentations. So very grateful for their generosity with their time. Genevieve serves as Associate Director for MICOP, Mixteco Indigenous Community Organizing Project, nonprofit serving Ventura County's Indigenous immigrant community. In this capacity, she's overseeing the organization's policy priorities, special events, communications, and is a founding member of the 805 Undocu Fund. Additionally, she's supervising programs specific to health, access and advocacy, mental health, and domestic violence, including 2 multi-year mixed methods research studies. Genevieve received her bachelor's degree in psychology and her master's in public administration from the University of Southern California, USC. She's currently serving as the board president for Ventura County's local LGBTQ organization, Diversity Collective, and as a board member for the Planned Parenthood Central Coast Action Fund. In 2018, she was awarded a Woman of the Year by State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson and Assemblymember Monique Limon for her work during the Thomas Fire. Super grateful to have you, Genevieve. Take it away. Oh, we can't hear you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. The audio kept cutting out, so I was panicking trying to connect via telephone. But hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you so much for having me this morning, / this afternoon, and for taking time also to share the space. So really quick, wanting to just touch on our organization. So like he mentioned, it's MyCOP for short. It's Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project. And as was mentioned, we work with indigenous migrants, mostly from southern Mexico, who speak their indigenous languages of Mixteco, Zapoteco, Purepecha, Otomi, Huave, and the like. And so we do our work through 19 different programs. They touch on different things, including our community radio station, direct assistance, and community organizing. So in terms of advocacy issues that we are currently working on with our community, it's around health access, so hence our presence here, and the work that we've done with having our say, advocacy around domestic violence issues, mental health issues, labor issues specific to farm workers, and most recently the census. And so yeah, I feel like, part of what we do is that I guess our organizing theory is I would say it's a little unique in that, we view ourselves, because we do both, right? We do direct assistance and community organizing. And the policy work. It's not just one or the other. So for example, with our domestic violence work, we provide a service, whether it's connecting folks to domestic violence support, or having them attend our Espacio Seguro, our safe space group. And then from there, we're able to develop a pool of leaders and provide them the support so that they can go on and create the systemic change that they need. So with that in mind, what I would like to do is just take you all through how we ran our AB60 license campaign. So I can go next and the next on the slide, and then the next one. And this presentation originally was in Spanish, so hence if you see some Spanish, that's why that is there. But so going back to our AB60 campaign, that was from 2015. And the first thing that we did is we gathered our community leaders and we asked them, hey, what is important to you? And so you can see here in this picture, it's a list of issues, right, that folks had identified as being important. So one of them is license, one of them is bullying, one of them is dirty bathrooms in the workplace, street repair. And so with us, it's also being nimble and responsive to the community that we work with. So given that our community members speak their indigenous languages, those languages are oral and don't have a written form. And so again, you can see here when we're presenting, what are the list of issues that had been pre-developed by leaders, it's something visual, it's something that people can see and they can connect with, as opposed to giving them a flyer and having them fill out a ballot. And so out of these issues, license, driving without a license was selected because a lot of our folks, due to their immigration status, were blocked from having a driver's license and couldn't even access the test in their indigenous language. So next, please. Okay, there we go. And so from there, part of gathering these priorities is hearing from community. So the pre-legwork to that was using the Cesar Chavez model of house meetings or one-on-one meetings, where we'd go meet community where they're at, in their homes, have them invite their friends and family, and just have a discussion in their language as to what is resonating with them. And again, it's different than having like a forum at like a school or a forum at our office where maybe a lot of folks can't go to, but making sure that we're really intentional about which neighborhoods we're connecting with to get, again, to get as broad of a response as we can. And so building on the one-on-one meetings, next slide, please, is meetings with 5 or more folks. And so again, the house meetings are very intimate, but then it's also us going to the parks and gathering folks, talking to folks about that. about the issues that again matter to them. And again, these are all photos from our 2015 campaign. Let's go ahead and next. And so as you saw in that first photo where we had delineated the different issues, then comes the voting. And so this was held at a school, and it was due to we wanted as many people as could attend possible. And so each person was given a sticker to identify what was going to be the issue that resonated most with them. And so you can see here everyone's little stickers. We have involved our youth because it's important to get them going while they're young in terms of you know, so systemic change and social justice. So next, please. And from there came, again, the AB60 language access. And this was, we see it as a win that my COP was very much intentionally involved with. And from this law, our people could ask for an interpreter in Mixteco to take the test and to actually get a license. And as we're seeing now with the current federal administration, having a license is so important because any little infraction is a means for deportation. And so we're really proud of having moved, you know, the work from the one-on-one House meetings up to the Capitol, advocating and having it finally signed into law by Governor Brown. So next, please. And then as a way of keeping this momentum and keeping the work going, making sure that we had committees that are specific to the issues that we want to work on. So these are a couple photos of the committee that worked on the license issue. A lot of them are volunteers. A lot of them, you know, worked in the fields during the day, but would take the time in the evening to be with us and to have their voice heard in terms of which direction they wanted the campaign to go towards. And then as we know, once laws get passed, there's also the implementation of it. So can we go to the next slide? And so it's also just informing the community of, okay, we have it now, and here's how you access it, here's how you use it. And so, again, just keeping the community empowered by keeping them informed, and also really recognizing the leaders in our community that were key in making this work happen. And then next, please. And it's not also just, you know, going to Sacramento and talking to folks, it's also having a physical presence in your community. What we found in our line of work is because so often we get lumped in with Spanish speakers because we're thought of like as an exotic language or whatnot, because the population isn't as large as Spanish speakers, we're often overlooked. And so having a real visual and physical presence in terms of community action, in terms of rallies on why these things are important, also helps support the campaign that we're working on. And then next slide, please. And I'm sure we all know on the call, you know, having a unified front makes the difference in terms of pushing the work. It's not one person, it's not one organization, it's a collective. And it's how, as a collective, that we're going to be making these systemic changes. So yeah, my presentation was pretty quick. Just wanted to take you through 2015 and what that looked like for us. And folks can still get their licenses. Folks can still take the test in their language. And a large part of that was because of the work that our community organizers were doing. So thank you.
Great. All right, thanks, Genevieve. So we're going to take a few minutes of pause so folks can think about questions that they may have for our speakers. I know I have some questions, so I'm going to write them myself. Okay, so keep the questions coming. We have a couple comments from folks. One of them said, lovely mural. I think that was for Tarek. And love the pictures. I think sometimes, you know, when we do webinars, it's actually quite rare to have all the slides be pictures. So I think, you know, we did it for the visual learners that are on the webinar. Great. Okay. So one question is that for Tarek, can you elaborate on your community planning process? So one of the sort of process you mentioned was, you know, before you decide on the issues, you go through the planning process. So can you elaborate more on that? Like, how does that work? How do you do the outreach? How do you do the facilitation?
Yeah, sure. So it happened. Our community planning process. When one campaign wraps up, what happens is that the team decides what campaigns do they want to take on next, and the teams that we have now aren't the teams that we've always had. So sometimes there have been issues, or there have been times in our org's history where a campaign is finished and then they don't want to work on any more issues and they kind of just disband. I haven't been here when that's happened, but I've been here about 2 years now, and it's always been these 4 teams. And the way that the planning process works is that we send out informationals and emails and to our network to let them know, hey, we're planning a new process, you know, please attend. And then we do a lot of phone banking to our active members or people within our network to let them know. We have it usually on a Saturday or in the evening times where most folks can attend. And we have an excellent facilitator. His name is Paul Watson. He's the head of the Global Arc. He's actually the founding member of Mid-City Can, who facilitates these planning processes. And they can go on, like I said, they take about 6 weeks, sometimes 2 months, and we try to meet once a week in 3-4 hour sessions, and everybody's ideas out there on the board and to address it. And then by the end, we have a kind of like a mission statement, clear goals and objectives, and a plan on how to tackle the issue. Hope that was clear.
Yeah. Super helpful. Okay, thank you, Tarek. And the next question we have from the audience, and this is for both Tarek and Genevieve, but I'm going to have Genevieve go first. What communication methods have you found to be the most effective for interaction with your community? For example, social media, newsletter, town hall, booths, etc. The question is, what communication methods have you found to be the most effective for interaction with your community? So Genevieve, I'm going to have you go first.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, because our community speaks oral Indigenous language, a flyer is not going to suffice in terms of getting the word out. It's helpful and it complements, but for us, it's really high touch work, promotoras going out into the community, talking to folks, organizers going out door to door, talking to folks. What we found in the last couple years, so in 2014, 2015, when we were doing AB60 work, we didn't have as strong of a presence with our radio station, but now we do. And we have found that our radio station has been a very powerful tool in moving messaging across, because our folks can access it when they're working in the fields 8 to 10 hours a day. There's applications on their smartphones that they can use to listen to it if they don't have radio access, or if they don't have data, they can call into a number and access our radio. And because we're a community power radio station, we're very intentional about the information that we put out. So it's PSAs on what's going on, their invitations to forums, their invitations to, call us if you're having this kind of issue, and we'll help you work it out. And so we feel like that's a very unique opportunity that we have to leverage the radio work with our community organizing work.
Thank you, Genevieve. Yeah, I've been to the radio studio actually at my COP. It was really cool. So that's great. Tarek, what about you? What communication methods have you found to be most effective for interaction with your community? And you got some youth in your community, so I'm sure you have to customize.
Yeah, It all varies on the team. For the youth council, we found that the most effective way to recruiting youth and getting them involved is to going to their schools and tabling and talking about the work and talking to the youth and telling them the work that we do. You know, not just the campaign work, but also the fun stuff that youth council offers them too, trips and things like that. So that's been very effective in recruiting youth. We have close to, I would say, like 70 youth that are part and an active core of like 35 to 40 youth that show up every Friday. The youth council meets every Friday. Regarding the other three teams, food justice, PCMT, and itch, I would say we set up, we do phone banking at certain times of the year and collect information and let them know about these campaigns in City Heights and whether they want to get involved. And then we collect that information, and then the organizers do follow-ups. They also do canvassing of certain areas. They cut out turf to knock and recruit there. They also do tabling. That's been very effective in building in those teams because those teams are a little bit older. They're on computers and they're on social media, but they also respond very well to just direct phone calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like what I'm hearing from you too is just the door-to-door, in-person phone calls, you know, kind of these old school, right? And it's the best way sometimes, right? With some of our community members, is building those relationships, and doing
Absolutely.
those one-on-one visits. Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess the last question, and we have just a few minutes left, for both of you, is both of your organizations, you know, do hyper-local work as well as statewide work, as well as, you know, if for MyCog, your organization do direct service, right, providing services. Are there challenges with doing this wide scope of work? It's a big question, I know, but I don't know if you have any comments on that. And I'm going to have Genevieve go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the honest truth is yeah, there are challenges in doing both, right? Because it's a different skill set for direct assistance work than it is for, you know, the statewide advocacy work. But that being said, we've been very lucky that we have people that can do both, right? And I think it's particularly impactful when you have the direct assistance work meeting up and informing the policy advocacy work, for example, like because I think I lean more on the domestic violence mental health work because that's more of my day-to-day programming that I supervise. But I think it's particularly powerful, you know, when you're in the Capitol, you know, pushing for like a state budget expansion for culturally responsive domestic violence services, and you have the survivor there present, talking to the legislator, right? Versus, you know, me, I mean, I could talk to the legislator, but it's not as impactful as having the woman who's like, you know what, this program at this organization helped me, and it helped me like leave the dark place that I was in. So I think again, they're separate skill sets, but they meet in a very amazing way to push an agenda. I think that we want to see. And I think the biggest thing that surprises people about my COP is just how big we are. We have a staff of about 65 people. And most folks think of us as like a small little like 10-person operation, but we're able to cover so many ground. Bless you. Or so much ground because of our staff and because we're able to focus on different things. So again, my labor issues team is different than my health access team. It's different than my domestic violence team, but where there's overlap, we definitely support each other as well. So small answer, yes, it's difficult, but I think it's what makes the work go forward.
I think that's, you know, there's the challenges, but also like by design, it's impactful. So that's great that, you know, y'all support each other. What about you, Tarek? What about your organization covering this sort of wide scope of work?
Our organization is actually not a direct service provider. So it's not, you know, as hard, I guess I would say. We when we do come across people looking for direct services, we point them into the direction where they can get that. It's, you know, the work itself is very, it is challenging, but it's also very rewarding. And you know, we stay focused on the 4 campaigns, or whatever campaigns that we're running at the time. We kind of stay hyper focused on it to not get distracted and get pulled into other avenues, because the work that, like, just doing those campaigns itself is, it's very, you know, it's very, they're long campaigns. They take a lot of focus and effort, and we always try to keep our eyes on the prize and not get diverted into different areas and different coalitions that are very well meaning, but we just don't have, might not have the capacity to be there, because we're not that big of an org either. We're only about I would say 15 full-time employees, and maybe another 8 part-time, and seasonal. So the challenge is for us is, like, you know, keeping everybody focused on the campaigns. But it's not that challenging, because, like I said, when we go through our planning process, like, we lay out the vision and the goals and the objectives. It's all very clear. Like, you know, if something comes up, like, then we go back to the drafting documents. Like, well, is it within that scope? And so that helps us kind of stay focused.
And I'd like to really quick echo that. And I think that's a place that we are now finding ourselves in, especially in the last year or so, is being very intentional about what we sign on to and what we join. Because we're so specific to a population, you know, you can imagine we have folks left and right being, oh, like, do this, do that, do this, do that. And for us, again, the real work has been like, okay, but is this in alignment with our overall mission? Does it fit within our strategic plan? How is this going to benefit community, and how can we use this opportunity to uplift community voices? And so I definitely want to agree with that whole intentionality piece of being that way when you're signing on to new possibilities or partnerships.
Yeah, that's super helpful, and the intentionality definitely extends to organizations like CPEN, statewide organizations that are working with orgs like My COP and Mid-City CAN. It, you know, also puts the responsibility on us to be intentional with our collaboration and with the partnership, right? So, you know, so that we can continue to uplift each other. So yeah, I think that was a really great kind of messaging for you all, attendees. I hope that, you know, you got some good tools and, you know, examples to use for your own work, and inspiration, and some tips, so that, you know, you can continue to do the work. And you know, I know from CPEN's point of view, you know, we are continuing to learn from our partners and the great work that everyone is doing. So yeah, we're just continue to do the work. So thank you so much for the speakers for being with us today, and for attendees for, you know, listening in. And you know, we're gonna put all the information on the Having Our Say Coalition website. So please take a look there. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending the webinar. Please take a few moments to complete the evaluation after this. Your feedback is very super important for us. And yeah, look forward to the next webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek, Genevieve, everyone.
Bye.